Hi, and welcome back to the HG Enable podcast. This is the show all about sharing our experiences of disability, neurodivergence, and long-term health conditions in UK higher education. I'm Cath, and this week I'm joined by Thea. She is a student at the University of Bristol, where she's studying for a BSc in Social Policy and Politics. Thea is currently taking part in the Change 100 internship programme and is preparing to start a Master's in Evidence-Based Social Intervention and Policy Evaluation at Oxford. Actually, a college I know my friends went to. It's very exciting. It's a pleasure having her on the show today. And I'm actually really excited because we never have many conversations about internships on this show. I know Murren was a great example of when I did, but it's not something that I really commonly have. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Thea today. So I think it's time we get started. Hi, Thea. Welcome to the show.
Hi. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you. It's not very often. Well, a lot of people come on the show, but normally they haven't really listened to many episodes before. But it sounds like you've been doing your homework and listening, and it's really lovely to have just a listener on the show as well.
It's cool. I like going down a little internet rabbit hole of podcasts and things. So yeah, it was kind of a good merge of my interest when I saw this, because I was like, disability and podcasts, what a great combination.
Oh, amazing. And not only that, but that you have a reason to listen to it as well. And I have enough episodes now as well. It's getting towards 50. You're like, oh, no, a rabbit hole. You just dive right in it.
I've got plenty of time to get through the backlog of episodes. I hate when I run out. That's the problem with podcasts.
I don't think that's going to be happening with us anytime soon. Right. So obviously we've had a bit of a chat. We can tell that from the way we're talking. But please could you introduce yourself to the listeners and share a little bit about your background in higher education?
Yeah, so I'm Thea. I'm just finishing up my undergrad in social policy and politics at the University of Bristol. I'm preparing for my master's in autumn, and also the Change 100 internship, which I'm in the process of starting at the moment. So that's a little bit about me. I'm kind of an aspiring social researcher, really, which is, I guess, informed by my experience of disability. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, and I think we'll get there as well as the episode goes on, because I know that you've done a lot of lived experience consultation as well. And there's a few bits there and we're going to get to it. But first of all, we're going to cover your journey so far, which is very exciting. So if you are comfortable saying, how did your disabilities, neurodivergence impact your experience of higher education and uni so far?
Yeah, so there's kind of two different things for me. Like, I have ADHD and arthritis. So firstly, with the ADHD, kind of the classic organization, focusing, planning, all those kind of issues have always impacted my education, like prior to uni. Even more so, I guess, at uni, when it all becomes a bit more independent and unstructured. I would say that, like, I'm on medication for ADHD, and that is really, really helpful, but it's not a solve all kind of thing. So yeah, the kind of classic issues of that, I'd say. And then more so for me personally, I have arthritis. It's psoriatic arthritis and axial spondyloarthritis, which is way too long of a word, really. I think, but basically all my joints don't work and they cause me a pain. That's the be all and end all of that. And because it's quite fluctuating, I found that to be the more disabling condition for me, at least in uni. Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. I know that joint issues are quite common in the neurodivergent community. So maybe there's some overlap there. Who knows?
I definitely think so. I don't think they've got to the bottom of it research wise, but I think there's definitely ideas around. My arthritis is autoimmune, and there's definitely kind of questions around that and inflammation and neurodivergence and how they all link together. Just got to figure out how it works.
And I guess, I mean, you said that you got your ADHD diagnosis in uni, right?
So weird one is that I was diagnosed at about, I think I was 15. It was just during or after COVID.
Yeah.
I was doing my GCSEs, and that's when I realised, oh no, I can't handle the independent learning that kind of came with remote learning. So yeah, COVID kind of made me realise that it was actually an issue and that I might actually have ADHD. Before that, it kind of had gone under the radar because I didn't struggle particularly in school. And because of the waiting list, my parents were really helpful and they helped me to get diagnosed privately. And then I just had medication on a shared care with my GP, which was fine. Moved to uni, moved GPs because I'm from Essex. I go to uni in Bristol, so had to move everything across. And it was sometime in my second year because they're getting rid of all the shared care agreements with private providers. So they were like, we can't give you your medication anymore, which is the main thing for me, really, because of having to pay for it privately. It would be like very expensive. So they made me get re-diagnosed. I've now just been re-diagnosed with ADHD again. I didn't expect to have to go through that whole process, but I went through right to choose, so that was an interesting experience. Yeah, so diagnosed twice.
But here's the thing, I went through right to choose, and I'm pretty sure that's also having a faff with shared care agreements, it's just the medication isn't as expensive.
This is the thing. I think it's they've decided to only limit the people they'll do shared care with to those specific people. Because before I was getting the paying NHS prices,
Yeah.
but then they've took me off. It's a whole faff of, will we give you your medication? Maybe, maybe not. Now we will, now we won't. And now they are giving me my medication, but I'm technically waiting to start medication, even though I'm on it and I've been on it for years, because they don't kind of acknowledge that I'm already on it. It's all a bit disconnected. I don't really understand, but been an interesting experience, definitely.
Yeah, this is a very UK healthcare system moment.
Yes, I have international friends, and they are just constantly very confused at what on earth we are doing and why. And I don't really have the answers for them, but yeah.
I wonder whether it's because we'll get back on the questions in a second.
Sorry.
But no, I'm finding this really interesting. Like, my partner grew up abroad after like the age of 7, for example, but he moved to a country where you have very cheap private healthcare as the default, but it's still like a lot of countries don't have a nationalized health system like this, or like the right to choose stuff, because it's all private. So maybe it's because of how the money's distributed in private healthcare, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely a lot of weird dynamics between encouraging private providers to kind of pick up the slack, but then also encouraging people to not go private as well. And then obviously the competition makes it really expensive.
Yeah.
It's all a bit of a minefield, really.
It is. I tell you what, we have to cut that discussion short there because we will be here for hours. Because I'm a nerd and you do social policy. So
yeah, anything social policy, it's always tangent with me.
I'll show you around Oxford one day because you realise you have an offer and haven't been yet. And I'm an alum. So maybe we just have a day trip where we just chat social policy.
Yeah. Right. No, I need to go.
Oh, I'll hold you to it. Right, we're going to get back on the questions though.
Mm-hmm.
So, set the scene. You're moving to Bristol from, you said Essex. It's a bit of a way.
Yeah, few hours.
Those few hours can be a lot. I was wondering, maybe focusing on the arthritis a second, because you said that was more disabling. Feel free to mention anything else. But what was it like moving to uni, especially like a decent distance, as someone with like a chronic and variable health condition?
Yeah, I think I didn't really realise too much until I reflected on it, like more so recently. But I guess it was that combination of the classic kind of worries of moving away from family or living alone for your first time, things like that. But with the arthritis, has made it all a bit more confusing, and also starting uni. So for me, I had a lot of stress about things like accommodation, like I had to be in like a ground floor flat and stuff like that. So that was a bit more complicated to organise, especially because, yeah, my condition, although it does often cause me like physical issues like mobility limitations and things, it's not very visible unless I was to be like using a mobility aid or something. People don't know. And then even more so because it fluctuates. So I can be quite able bodied one day and then not another day, which also just confuses everyone, really. So I think trying to figure out what I needed, like what accommodation would be best for me, or and what study support, and how I would tackle having flair if I was living on my own, like was definitely made way more confusing by the fact that I can't predict how my arthritis will be. Like for me, my worst flare up I've ever had was actually in first year. So I didn't know prior to that how bad it could even get. So how do you can't know what you don't know kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as well, the admin of it all, I feel like no one talks about it enough, but having to move all your health information, I had to switch GPs. Like a lot of people I know don't do that, but I have a lot of routine health appointments, blood tests, all that, and had no clue how to go about any of it. Figured it out, but it was definitely a bit of chaos at the beginning, on top of the classic starting uni and moving away. Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly thought the GP thing was normal until I saw people weren't doing it. Maybe it's because I moved so well. In York, I moved like from Bournemouth, so I moved like 4 hours, like 6 hour drive up the country. So that one I kind of had to. But then in Oxford as well, maybe because I was already used to it and I kind of knew I can be a bit sickly. I just changed. I don't get how people like don't change their GPs. It jars me. Dentist, I understand, but GP's always been one that's confused me.
Definitely, I forget how much people don't go to the GP, like because I'm there all the time. I just forget that people genuinely just don't, they don't get ill, they don't go. And that's like such a funny concept to me. But yeah, I had the same thing where I did assume everyone was doing it, and then everyone was like, no, I haven't done that. And I was like, oh,
But like even in so I remember I had we think it was something ridiculous like walking pneumonia. I went in my first week of uni, I got way too drunk, stood in the rain for like an hour queuing for a club, and then surprise got like really sick. But I went to the GP and they were starting to treat me, and they were like, "Oh, by the way, you're 2 vaccinations overdue." So not only was I there like sniffling, which is the bit you're in for, they were also just like jabbing me in, like I got a jab in each arm. And I wouldn't have had that if I just stayed at my home GP, which it was kind of sad, but it was also very important that I did it. We really underestimate our uni GPs.
I think especially like young people generally, just if they've not got a chronic health condition or something, like just think they won't be ill. It doesn't concern them a little bit, I think, until they get a bit older. So people just don't think about like what, yeah, things like that that might be picked up when you go for something else. They don't, or they don't consider they might suddenly be ill and need to go, if they haven't experienced having to do that, I guess, in the past.
If you are listening to this podcast and you are a student at, or like, if you're just somewhere where your GP isn't nearby, go fix that, please. Like, it's so helpful.
Also, to be fair, something that I use all the time now that no one told me about is you can register temporary. You can register up to 3 months at a GP service temporary. And I end up doing that when I'm in Essex, like for Christmas or for summer. It's probably what I'm going to do next year for Oxford, since I'm only there for a year. So I'm probably going to re-register in Essex and then be temporary in Oxford. But no one told me about that before. You can do that without unregistering, because I know a lot of people, they don't want to unregister with their original GP.
Yeah.
But no one told me that you could do that at all.
I'm going to go on a quick tangent, which hopefully the Oxford offer holders like. Be careful if you do that. because at least in my college, it varies by college because of course it does. Um, medical evidence requires you to be registered with a particular GP. At least in my college, it was like, if you don't have your extenuating circumstances form from the college GP, we're not going to honor it, which is rogue. But just make sure that if you do that, that your registration doesn't lapse in the middle of exam season.
This is true. I definitely need to speak to them. That's another thing. I guess it's doing it all again. I'm like, oh, I've learnt so many lessons moving to Bristol, and then Oxford is a completely different system for everything. So it's all the new struggles and figuring out. I need to speak to them about that really and interrogate the college health people about what I should need to do really.
It's not that bad once you get into it. Once you understand the Oxford like collegiate system and what's centralized and what isn't, it's okay. But it's very intimidating from the outside. You can just put like this big wall of awful around it because you're like, oh my god, what's going on? If you ever want me to body double you, let me know. I'm going to pull us back to the questions now. And kind of relevant actually, because we've been speaking about, I guess, some obstacles there, potential future ones. But I want to focus on maybe more in the past now, or ongoing, potentially. Did you encounter any obstacles during your time at uni, or are you currently encountering any obstacles? Have you managed to navigate them, and if so, how?
Yeah, I would say a big thing, yeah, is my arthritis and kind of the flare-ups. Talking in the past, I had my worst flare-up in first year towards the end of first term and second term, which was quite a lot because I was in the process of had to move over all my secondary care stuff. So I see like a rheumatologist. So had to switch that around and stuff. But the first half of first term was great, was going out, all of the welcomes things, having a great time. And then it kind of hit me like a brick. um, so I get joint pain in name a joint. I probably had it essentially, but like massively my back and my hips and my knees. So had all that, knocked off all my basically ton of my attendance. Did manage to get my assessments done with like thankful for extensions. That was really helpful. I know some people do prefer to do more independent learning and do more remote learning, but for me personally, I think I benefit a lot from that face to face, speaking to people in person, knowing who you're in a class with and who you're actually talking to. So not being able to engage with that as much because I wouldn't be able to get to uni or either mobility wise or just fatigue and pain wise wasn't the best option. So I did manage to kind of navigate that through remote options. I think from COVID, there's been a lot of good things left over, like everything being recorded. That was really, really useful. But for me, I do prefer in-person learning. So it was a little bit unfortunate. Yeah, I think it is a constant effort, really. For me, medication has helped a lot, especially in the last year. But it's also the kind of medication it will probably stop working at a point. So always on edge of when that will happen. But it is very helpful, at least at the moment, because it kind of just takes away a lot of the issues, I guess. But I think, yeah, definitely a lot of the remote learning stuff left from COVID has been the most helpful thing for kind of built-in accommodations, I guess.
It's not kept at every uni, which is a shame. But do you feel like Bristol's done quite a good job of it?
I think so. I think it does vary department wise. I'm over two departments at Bristol, politics and social policy, because they're in different schools. And I feel like there is some variation there. So I'm assuming it's also the same across like wider differences in faculty and stuff. So it might be that I've just got lucky with department wise. But I do think it's pretty good, like all the lectures being recorded and uploaded, and generally all the information is like online beforehand, and yeah, on the most part you can engage remotely, although it isn't obviously built for that to be the default, but I think a lot of it has been left over.
No, it's good when there's always been something good that's left over, because it shows we're actually learning. It's as long as it doesn't get rescinded, I think, is the important thing, and just remembering that we can keep it for a reason. Because I guess the other obstacle as well is it's not just dealing with the flare ups, but it's also, I'm guessing if it's arthritis in its joints, you need to strengthen your joints as well, and there's extra like self care that goes into that as well, right? And extra just effort.
Definitely. Like, I was never big into sports generally because of my joint issues, but Bristol offered me a really helpful program, basically giving me a free trial for the gym. And that was a really helpful way to kind of help manage my joints and, yeah, build strength. And generally, it's just good for general well-being as well, I think, working out. So that's been really good for that, but it's definitely a bit harder to navigate things like health and fitness and stuff when you're also factoring in a condition like arthritis.
I was gonna say, I guess just the balance is like, you're like, oh, I should like probably strengthen my joints, but also, I'm crumbling a bit.
Exactly, because with arthritis, exercise helps. Like, being stationary makes it worse, but often in the short term, it's like it can hurt. So then you don't want to do it, and you obviously don't want to cause more issues. But long term, it is actually really useful.
And with ADHD as well, because you don't really, like, neurologically, people can struggle to see the long term goal of something. It's much more like immediate gratification. I guess it compounds because the immediate gratification is just pain.
Yeah, definitely. I think recently, one of the advisory things I've been doing, there's some studies going on about executive dysfunction and musculoskeletal conditions. And it's been really interesting because I have thought a lot about how those two interact and kind of make each other worse a little bit, because you've got all the physical stuff and then you've also got to plan what to do about it, and all the appointments and management. And yeah,
Huh.
it's a lot to think about, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we'll kind of keep on the academics, but we're gonna take a quick turn into internship territory. But student internships, so it counts. So you're part of the Change 100 internship program, which is the one for disabled students that's just ramping up for the year. And you said you've done some other internships besides, which is really cool. And I was just wondering what it's been like dealing with the pressure of trying to get internships and sustain internships as a disabled student, and what that's been like for you, because I never did any, and we never really get to discuss it on the show.
Definitely. I think a lot of my thoughts on it are quite similar to thoughts I've had on part-time work and volunteering and any kind of things like that as well. So I completed a summer internship last summer at the Uni of Cambridge. It was a social research internship for students from underrepresented backgrounds in postgrad.
Oh, cool.
So it was to kind of encourage social science students if they were interested in postgraduate research. So that was really fun. Before the Change 100, that was the main thing I'd really done. But I think there's a massive stress on getting internships, especially from me. I just know as a social science student, but I'm sure it's similar across other disciplines. But there seems to be this massive pressure that you need to get a summer internship to try and secure a grad job or fill your CV. And that can kind of seem like the be all and end all. And at the same time, there's barely any actual opportunities unless I think you do like engineering. That's all I seem to see, at least. So massively competitive, but everyone's telling you that you have to have one. So a lot of stress for everyone generally, I guess. But for me, I think if you have a disability, a lot more comes with that. Of, do you disclose that? How do you ask for reasonable adjustments? What is in your capacity, especially when you're taking up a lot of time in summer that, at least for me, with ADHD, I end up being a little bit burnt out at the end of the academic year. So then pushing yourself to do something else is also can be quite a lot. Yeah. And I think for me, I kind of had avoided internships until last summer. More so work experience in general. I had done some part-time work, but I kind of had issues there because with having an invisible disability, you have to disclose it. People don't know off the bat that you have this condition. And then with it being fluctuating, as I think I mentioned before, it can be so confusing to try and explain to someone that you're disabled, but also explain that the extent to which you're disabled changes and that you can't predict that. It just can feel, you can get a bit of imposter syndrome, especially when I am more like functionally abled, then I can feel like I seem like I'm making it all up when I know I'm not. And now I'm more confident to not think that way. But I think it definitely can put you off applying for internships purely on the basis of having to explain all that to an employer. Yeah.
Because it's explaining it to the employer. Do you think that is it part of the application process as well? I guess is what I want to ask. Is that something you share with employers as part of the application process, or do you find that it's something that comes later?
I think for me, I generally have. I think often they have the kind of tick box EDI stuff that they don't share through the actual application. Like it doesn't impact your application. I feel like have been quite confident to share. For me, especially the internships I've actually completed, like I applied to a lot more than I actually did last year. So I think wider internship wise, they're not always as, they might just not ask or there might not be space to share it until you have succeeded in the role, which I think the general advice I've been given is that that is the way to go to try and prevent them from discriminating against you in the actual application process, even though that's not the way it should necessarily be, especially if you need accommodations in interviews and things like that. So the one I did at Cambridge, that was, I would say, more inclusive. So they kind of asked about these things and I felt more confident to open up about them in the application process. And obviously Change 100, it's targeted at disabled students, so they are way more on it with asking about all those things, and you know off the bat that that's the idea, so that you're not going to be judged or discriminated against, or that's the hope. So, and in my experience, yeah, it's been good.
Oh, amazing. I'm going to ask you just an off the cuff question, actually. Do you have any advice for someone who's trying to juggle internship applications with just uni life disability? Did you find anything that worked for you?
Yeah, I would say, although there is a big pressure, like don't push yourself too hard. I think a lot of people try to juggle too much and then do end up burning out. And I think especially when you have conditions like arthritis where they can cause fatigue and things like that as well, you've got to be really careful not to kind of burn yourself out. But I do think sometimes it's taking that risk. For me, I think it was about being more confident to ask for adjustments, even though that can be easier said than done. And just giving it a go, because I think a lot of these programs that I applied for have done, like, I might have just assumed that they wouldn't be accessible, or just assumed that the person employing me didn't care at all, and why would they care, and they would of course discriminate against me. And then I've actually met some really lovely people, had some really good supervisors who have been really understanding. So not that that is always the case, but I think it can be easy to assume it will go the worst way before you even tried. So there's no harm in just applying and asking. And then if it doesn't work out or it's not a fit for you, or you don't like the employer, then yes, I guess there is a lot more effort that you've then put in. But if you didn't apply, you'd be in that position. So I think being just a bit more confident that it's okay to ask for accommodations, and not every single internship or employer will think badly about the fact that you might need time off, or you might need different working hours, or you can't guarantee that everyone will be the best, but not everyone is the worst equally.
Yeah, I think that's very good point, because I think that a lot of people just get very scared, rightfully. But yeah, no, it's like not everyone's gonna be bad. You just gotta find what works for you. And I find that you can probably see pretty quickly the culture and whether it will fit and make a judgment around that. We're gonna change tact again, but it's kind of adjacent. I want to ask you about clubs and societies, but I guess if you're coming from talking about internships, it's kind of finding those groups that you fit in with, right? And bring more to your university experience. So were there or are there any club societies or initiatives that have made a significant positive difference to your time at uni?
So I think with clubs and societies, there's not a specific university club or society that I feel has had a massive impact. I have enjoyed taking part in like politics society, things like that at Bristol, which I think has been a good way to kind of meet new people and make sure that I'm not too isolated, I think, at university. I think generally for me, it's been more so the relationships I have with family and friends really that have supported me rather than specific initiatives. But I will say, like, wider than university, I think a lot of my experience with charities and volunteering and things like that has been, for me, more important to find community and support. I've done a lot of stuff with Arthritis UK, and I'm on their young people's panel at the moment, which is really fun and like quite a good way to meet people with shared experience of disability and arthritis. So I think sometimes it's looking outside of the university itself at wider opportunities and groups and initiatives to kind of find what works well for you, I think, or at least in my case.
Absolutely. I think there can be a lot of forgetfulness that there's a lot of student volunteering and internship schemes outside of uni, because in a way, I feel like you're trained to be very insular, and like we have the University Career Service and we have this, that, and the other for University of X, but it can mean that you don't necessarily look outside that bubble. But there's usually so much opportunity there, and it's only when you come out of education and you're like looking around, you're like, oh, actually, I probably accidentally missed a bunch of things because I was in the bubble.
This is true. And I think, to be fair, even at Bristol, there is a lot of things that I know they're on my periphery that I don't engage with and I probably would benefit. Like they do specific disability career support, which I think the online advice is that's the stuff I've used and it has been helpful. And I know that they do offer more things that way. I haven't got round to using it as much as I probably should. But yeah, especially I think when you're trying to connect with maybe other disabled students or other people with a different identity that you share, sometimes if it's a numbers thing, like I think there's been a lot of societies that have existed in the past at Bristol that haven't been sustained just because if there's not enough people to run it, kind of thing. And so sometimes connecting with students, a lot of the things I do for young people, so a lot of those people do end up being students, obviously not all of them, but
Yeah.
it's quite common. So I've been able to connect with people at other universities like across England and across the UK, which has been really nice because then you think, oh no, it's not just me. There's other people, and even if they're at a different institution, they're having similar experiences and you kind of share advice. And I think that is also really helpful, definitely to get outside the bubble.
Oh, for sure. And it's also one of the reasons the show exists, right? Is that sometimes the experiences can be very isolating that you face as a disabled student, and you won't necessarily, or you won't know where to look to see it represented inside your institution. So going outside of that and finding things is just, yeah, it's the best.
Definitely.
Right. Next question. It's one I ask all of my guests. No is a valid answer. I was wondering whether you've experienced any instances of your disability, neurodivergence proving helpful in a higher education setting.
I think it's such an interesting question. I think I am always very cautious around the whole disability being a superpower idea and like it being some heroic story. But at the same time, I do think it has massively shaped my skill set and my path and everything. So I can't ignore that. I think with ADHD, it's way more obvious to me. Like for me, when I got diagnosed, it was like, oh, that's my whole personality, but it's not. It's actually ADHD. So I think for me, it's quite intrinsic to myself and my character and the things I like about myself. And obviously, it causes a lot of struggles, which I don't like to undermine. But I do sit there and I think, wow, the way I think about things, the way I can connect the dots, or the way I can hyperfixate on things might not always be the most useful, but it also can come in handy. And I don't know what I'd be without that. I don't think I'd be myself. I'd be a completely different person. I wouldn't think the way I think. So I do think ADHD more clearly can be really helpful for having a different perspective and linking things, especially. I also, with the arthritis, it's been a bit harder to see in like intrinsic benefits. I think, especially in conversations around disability, there's a lot of things that don't apply to chronic pain and things like that, because it's a lot harder to think of it as an objectively positive thing, or at least for me. But I think it definitely has, it's been the key motivator to my kind of career goals and my research interests. And it's provided a lot of opportunities, even if it's not through the symptoms or the effects of the condition itself. I've been able to take part in a lot of advisory work, which has been really, really cool. And obviously connecting with Arthritis UK and being part of the young people's panel. And I've taken part in a lot of research studies, and both as a participant and as like a lived experience advisor. And I think obviously I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have the experience. Like I think acknowledging that disability gives kind of a unique experience and a unique perspective is a really cool thing to realize. And I think has given me the opportunities to kind of build my research skills, build confidence, make connections, and all that, even if the condition and the symptoms itself haven't kind of given me any benefits.
This question always pans out differently, I find, if you have a physical condition versus, say, a neurodivergence. Because I had Tom, one of my good friends from York, on the show a while back. He's a type 1 diabetic. And he was like, well, you know, the condition itself just kind of sucks. And that bit is hard, but it's also like, I've learned logistical skills and I've learned this, that, and the other. And it's, you know, the condition itself sucks and it's not going to bring any, it's not going to bring any immediate benefit, but it's also, you learn a lot more about self-organization, self-starting, because you just have to.
Definitely. I think it's such a nuanced kind of conversation. I think I'll probably change where I stand in the future. I think I always flip-flop a little bit, because 100%, I think one thing I know how to do is deal with unexpected circumstances and deal with unexpected time restraints. And with my condition being fluctuating, I suddenly not have the time I think I have for an assessment, and having to deal with that, it's become my normal. So in some ways, it can be really helpful in times of chaos and unexpected circumstances. But then definitely, I think sometimes I think people try a lot to find a benefit for things like that. And there are, and I think for me there are, but sometimes I also have to take the pressure off and remind myself that it can just be bad. I think like it can just suck a bit. And I think that's also equally important to almost accept, because you don't have to have a benefit. It can just be bad sometimes.
Yeah. I think that we're taught to romanticize because it's like, sometimes it feels like the only way to stay positive. Right, we're gonna do our last few questions. And actually, this one feeds in very nicely. I'm gonna ask you just for like a 1 or 2 sentence rapid fire, but they're pretty small questions anyway. So your experience as a disabled student, you're obviously doing a lot of work in social policy, and you do Change 100 and stuff around disability as well. Well, you're obviously going, you have an offer from Oxford, hopefully going there in September. And I was just wondering, how or are your experiences as a disabled student shaping the next steps in your academic journey?
They 100% are. I've fallen down the rabbit hole of social research and disability policy, kind of within that, specifically to musculoskeletal conditions, so arthritis and similar conditions, and access to healthcare for young people with those conditions and other underrepresented groups in research. So, definitely, my experiences of health and social care and disability have kind of motivated me to research on that topic. And that's what I've just completed my undergrad dissertation in that topic. And I'm hoping to expand that through a master's and possibly a PhD, but who knows really. But kind of go down that route of research that can influence healthcare policy in the UK for people with chronic health conditions. So, yeah, I think if I didn't have the condition, I wouldn't have had the issues. I wouldn't have been annoyed about the issues. I wouldn't have wanted to then change the issues and therefore do the research. So, definitely fed into that. It all feels like one big interconnected tangle for me, at least. And it's just making it better for the next people. That's all I really want to do.
And also, like, well, congrats on submitting your dissertation. And
Thank you.
yeah, and let me know about the thesis work, because that sounds really interesting. And I think it's going to make this next question really interesting. How do you think we can improve the experience of higher education as both individuals and a society? Feel free to relate it to your lived experience.
There's so many things. The social policy brain in me wants to write an essay on it. But I think on an individual level, I think it's just being loud. And again, it's always easier said than done. But I think not everyone is confident, like sharing their experiences or like advocating for themselves. And it's a very hard thing to do. But I think for people with disabilities or people without as well, just being loud about it, that's what's helped me a lot. And like me and my friends with disabilities, just being a bit obnoxious about it, really. Like, if something's weird or wrong or you're not getting listened to, if you do feel confident to do that, I think doing that is really important. I think if more people were like very explicit about things, then people would learn a lot quicker. Because a lot of it is just people don't know. And if people don't speak to each other about their experiences and what is kind of barriers and or just useful tips to overcome barriers, then it's a lot harder to learn and you feel a lot more alone. So I think when individuals are just more open about it, it just makes a big difference as a first step. I think society wise, it's a massive task to be done. I think there definitely needs to be a lot of setup done in primary and secondary education to support higher education. I think the transition is a big issue where a lot of people feel it's just too much and they don't go into higher education in the first place. So I think thinking about prior to that is really important. And yeah.
That bit's absolutely true. I did a bit of consulting recently, and I was saying this is that we're going into uni assuming that students can know what they want and need about learning style, but if they have the rug pulled under them when they come to uni because it's such a different environment, you need to support them. And that's so important. But I'll tell you what, that was a big question, and it's a bit of a tricky one to put at the end of a podcast, at the end of a long podcast. But I like keeping it in because I get answers like this, and I think you just kind of get out the most important things that you want to say. So yeah, that was a really good answer to a very big question. Thank you. Last question though. We're nearly there. So Thea, you've run us through your story today. Obviously, that story is still going. Maybe after Oxford, we have you back on the show. We'll see.
Part 2.
Oh, I would love that. Absolutely, keep me updated. But I was wondering, with what we've covered and where we leave your story now, maybe looking into the future a bit if you want. In a couple of sentences, what is one key takeaway that you would like listeners to remember from your story?
I was thinking a lot about this. I think, kind of to reiterate what I said before, is like, just don't be afraid to be a bit obnoxious. If you have a disability and you feel comfortable being loud about it, be loud about it. Tell people, like, I think not everyone is, but if you are, I think it's really important. I think that's something I wish someone had kind of told me earlier. So, yeah. Also, just having respectful conversations with people around you, disabled or not disabled, it just helps everyone learn as long as everyone's respectful. And I also think I've learned it's really important to consider, if it's of interest, how your lived experience gives you a unique perspective. You have perspective that no one else has. Like, you have that expertise that other people don't, because you've come from a different context. So I think using that to your advantage, taking part in advocacy, advisory roles, things like that, if it's of interest, I think that's something that I wish people were more aware was out there, because there's quite a lot of opportunities and a lot of them can be quite low commitment. So they can be great if you have a fluctuating condition. You, one, get to meet people who have shared experiences with you or different experiences, and you learn from them, and you also get to kind of make a difference in a more tangible way, which is really fun. So I'd always recommend that people look into that if that's something that they'd be interested in.
I had a conversation last week's episode with Abhishek, which you wouldn't have heard because it's not out yet. But Abhishek, for context, is blind. And he was saying basically the same as what you were saying, where he wants to do law in the academy and do academia, and how he can bring the experience of being blind to his work and to inform the policy. Because as we speak, obviously that episode isn't out, but I really recommend listening to it when it is, because it opened my mind, to be honest, on the kind of lived experience that I wouldn't even, like, obstacles I wouldn't even consider.
Exactly that. I think people, you don't think, if you've not had those experiences, you just don't even think of them as possibilities until it happens a lot of the time. I think that would be so cool to hear about, because same here, I've conversations even with people who are close to me, and I'm under the impression they know experiences of mine, or they know the extent of my condition, and then suddenly I say something and they're like, what? That can happen? And I have to remind myself that it shouldn't be assumed that they know that. And so I think using that experience and not taking it for granted, or not assuming that people already know these things, can be cool. And then you realize you have something new and unique to share, which is fun.
Oh, absolutely. Right. We're at time. We're going to leave it there today, Thea. So I'm just going to close up. But thank you so much. So HE Enabled is the show all about sharing our experiences of disability, neurodivergence, and long-term health conditions in UK higher education. If you are listening to this episode before the 17th of May, then congratulations, you're a patron. If you want to join the Patreon, I try and add some of my photography on there, and I try and upload episodes early when I can. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't, but I try. Then, it'd be great to have you along. It's only £1 a month, so very, very low commitment. If you wish to donate to the show but don't want to have a monthly commitment, that's okay. You can buy me a coffee. The links to both the Patreon and the Ko-Fi are through the episode description. And if you're interested in sharing your story, let me know. There is a Linktree link in the episode description. I'm currently looking for guests. I would love to have you on the show. But I think for now, that is it. Thea, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun.
Oh, no, it's been great.